now that's the first time it has said that. This meeting is being recorded. Welcome, everybody. It is May 27th. I don't know about you, but May, the second half of May especially, just kind of blew on by. It was wild out there. But we're getting to June, and that's okay because the weather has kind of felt like June anyway. It surely doesn't today, though. These are our ESABA sponsors. We want to thank them for their participation as well as their sponsorship. This is 30 years of ESABA energizing the East Side, so we're also excited to celebrate that with Ideal Printers, DV Creative, and Harrington Langer and Associates, State Farm and the Office of Juan Cervantes on Ruth Street there for State Farm, the Sane Foundation, M Health Fairview, St. Paul Federal Credit Union, the St. Paul Port Authority, Highway Credit Union, Metropolitan State University, Sunrise Banks, Walters Recycling and Refuse, and Health Partners. Thank you, annual sponsors. We also want to do some introductions with all of you, but before we do, I'll drop our agenda in the chat so you can kind of see where we're headed today. Here we go. We'll use the chat function and feature, so go ahead and drop any information you'd like to about yourself in the chat, who you are and which organization you're with, and just a snapshot of what you do to help us as we kind of move through our meeting. Feel free to ask questions in the chat or comments as per usual using that chat feature. Go ahead and turn on your cameras for a minute, and we'll get a chance to wave at each other and acknowledge the different industries that we're coming from so that our presenters get a chance to meet us. So if you can, yep, there you go. I see most folks are able to turn on there. We're coming back. I saw Rachel earlier, so we made there. She's back. I saw Tyler earlier. All right. Oh, Tyler, you're on and on. I see you in another box. And Rick Howden. Rick, do we get to see what kind of background you have on today? We'll see if Rick is able to click in video function. All right, let's do some introductions across our team here. So if you are a part of an East Side business, if you run an East Side business or a part of an East Side business, give us a wave. There's Kai Lawson with Aflac, Krista Schnelli with the St. Paul Saints, Rachel and William with Rainbow International of St. Paul, Rainbow International Restoration of St. Paul, Nathan at 11 Wells. Did I miss anybody? Darren at DV Creative. Oh no, there you are. And Darren's not only a sponsor, he's a board member and he owns a small business. Darren trifecta today. I love it. Okay, Tyler Chan, I think about you in that category too. Payment Smith as a merchant processor is a business as well. I don't know if you waved or not. Yep, he did. Okay, great. So cool. If you work at an East Side nonprofit or you work at a nonprofit, give us a wave. So there we have Randy from MSS, Andrea from Family Values for Life, Claire Thomas from ESNDC, Krista from Mounds Park Theater, Historic Mounds Park Theater, and me from ESABA. And now our presenters as well, Dana Conroy and Beth Scheetz from Guild, also a nonprofit, and also a new ESABA member. Welcome, and thank you. Okay, if you work in a public-private partnership, we don't have anybody from the St. Paul Port Authority today, but we do have Rick Howden from the county, Ramsey County. So working in the public sector. Rick, are you live? Are you able to click on and say hi?
I'm having some issues with my camera, but I'm here, so thanks for having us.
We're great to have you on the show always, Rick, and thanks for being a part of this topic. Rick works with the Rapid Response Unit for Ramsey County and has really worked with small businesses this year and been a fantastic resource on our show for talking about what's new and what businesses are facing and what resources are available. So that's great. Thanks for being on, Rick. All right, we're going to jump right into this conversation, but first to kind of set some context for this equity conversation that we're having today. We have been talking about advocating for the success of the diverse East Side business community for all of the years that I've been a part of ESABA. Part of celebrating 30 years is figuring out where the shifts in our history really have come. But for more than 5 years, ESABA has really been dedicated and working on the emerging economic engine of the East Side. And we see that as businesses run by people of color, immigrants, and immigrant communities and women on the East Side. That's what we see kind of new and coming alive on the East Side. So those have been the businesses that we've really been working on reaching out and connecting with. At the same time that we're kind of prioritizing that, we also need to keep working on deepening our understanding of how challenging a landscape this is for Black people, people of color, immigrants, and women to own and run businesses, and understand how we can be good support for advocating for that success. It's also tricky to run a small business no matter what. So, there are certain barriers that come in our culture because of where we are in our historical moment. And then there are certain problems that come with just trying to work in this economy. So, and all of those things compound and make exciting and challenging the work that we do. So for a while, the board has really been saying, hey, we need to focus on some of these issues and really drill down. I think we could do some education on this. And the board has really said, let's figure out how. So this is how this conversation has come about today. And I'm so excited that you all are participating in it. Part of the question with Guild has really been, and I'm looking for, Lori, are you coming on? Oh, yes. Hi, Lori. Lori Sieber from the St. Paul Port Authority. It's good to have you on the show, Lori. Oh, it's Andrea. Andrea, who's, okay, there we go. Sorry, just looking for a mute. If you have an opportunity, we'll give you an opportunity to speak as we go to. Anyway, want to welcome Guild. Many of you will remember that Guild, a longtime participant in ESABA meetings, a volunteer from Guild, David Downing. Anybody have a distinct, I remember David as one of the first people I met coming to ESABA meetings when I was working for a small business on the east side. And David loved coming and talking about Guild and the work that Guild is up to. Well, we now have Guild as a member of ESABA, which is so great. And we've been having this conversation about how they have integrated and worked on equity issues and worked on equity as a topic to learn and create some conversation around inside their organization. So I've invited Guild today, and we're happy to have you on the show to help us have this conversation about where equity fits into the work, how it is a framework through which we see our work, and how Guild has really used it so that we can prompt some more conversation. And really, we'll turn to you all in the second half of the show to think about, how are you focused on these issues? What are the things that you're doing? What are some things we could better do as an East Side organization serving the entire East Side to try to help make progress in this space? So that is where we're going today. Thanks for letting me, give a little, that was a little longer wind up than we usually have here at the front of the show. But I am delighted to invite Dana Conroy and Beth Scheetz from Guild to start us off on this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paris. It's our pleasure to be here and to have an opportunity to get to know the business community better through ESABA. I'll start by introducing myself, and then I'll introduce Beth, and then talk a little bit about how we're connected with diversity, equity, and inclusion at Guild. Beth is our Chief Clinical Officer, and I'm really grateful that she's here to answer any questions about our organization. Beth only has a little bit of time to be with us here, so she won't be here through the whole thing. Beth, if you're still with us, did you want to just say hello?
Yeah, thanks, Dana. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for asking us to join and have this conversation. This has been a long time and a lot of work, and we are still working very hard at Guild on our diversity, equity, and inclusion, and really shifting the lens that we are seeing our work through, not just our work with our clients, but our work with each other and our work with our communities. And so I think Dana's put together a really lovely one-page handout and has some great stories to share of experiences that she's had with the clients that we serve. We work with clients who are diagnosed with mental illness and are struggling with homelessness and unemployment. And so she's going to give some firsthand accounts. So I'm going to let her share her stories because she's out in the field every day working with our clients as they're working through this. And yes, I can only be here till 11:30, so I do apologize about that, but thanks for having us.
So before 11:30, if you have a question for Beth, just let Paris know, and you can stop me, Paris, anytime. Okay, so I am one of 6 employment specialists at Guild. I work in Ramsey County with my colleague Ebony Johnson, and the rest of us cover Dakota and Scott counties. Ebony and I are in the community most of the time, which is a little different now due to COVID, but still our role is to get to know people like you and to introduce you to Guild and to people with mental illness with a variety of backgrounds who are looking for employment. I've been an employment specialist for 30 years and I love this work. I get to know businesses and business leaders, and I get to know people who are looking for work really well. Guild is a Minnesota not-for-profit 501c3 organization. Our work is to empower those living with mental illness, including individuals experiencing homelessness, as Beth indicated, by helping them find the tools that they need to live stable, fulfilling lives. On the topic of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I want to be sure that we aren't coming across as experts. In our opinion, there are no experts because no matter who you are or what your background is, there is so much to learn about people who are different than you. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to Guild. Many of the people we serve struggle because of disadvantaged backgrounds and histories of trauma. I'm learning that we all have histories of trauma, but some more than others. Much of what we do at Guild is to help these folks overcome barriers to opportunities that many of us already enjoy. Despite the passion that our team has for this work, we realize that we too, as leaders and staff at Guild, are also biased and set in our own privileged ways. So we're not only working to reduce barriers in the community, but also within each of our own hearts and minds. We're working to understand diversity, equity, inclusion in a variety of ways. During the past 3 years, Guild has worked with consultants and trainers. We've had a mandatory all-agency trainings on DEI as part of our strategic vision. These trainings have given us the opportunity to learn what DEI means and have allowed us to engage in dialogue with each other about our lived experiences and to get to know one another and our differences. For me, the biggest takeaway from our all-agency trainings is the simple but very real concept that the best way to reduce walls is familiarity. There are many ways to increase familiarity. I didn't even realize myself how unfamiliar I've been until I've started to get more familiar, even just by doing simple things like when I'm selecting a movie for my own entertainment. I'm now selecting more movies that expose me to different cultures. My husband and I actually moved to downtown St. Paul a few years ago, which definitely exposes us to more diversity on a regular basis. Guild recognizes that we have more to do. So we started a committee of volunteers from within the agency called Guild for All. This diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative serves as a foundation for Guild's efforts to become a more inclusive workplace where all staff members can be valued as their authentic selves at work. I'm a member of this committee, and one of the things I really appreciate is that we get to communicate as a staff-led committee with executive leadership. We have a modest budget of our own, and so we've hired our own consultant. Many of our members voluntarily participate in trainings ongoing and are interested in doing what we can in our own time to increase our knowledge and familiarity with people who are different than ourselves. In this way, we hope to become better able to inspire a spirit of inclusion at Guild and in the community. We're aware that becoming more inclusive isn't a goal that's ever reached. It's a process, And I think it only happens if a person or an organization is intentional about it. Another thing we've done at Guild is we've begun a book club. The current book is My Grandmother's Hands by Resmaa Menakem. Did I get that right, Beth?
Resmaa Menakem.
I knew I was going to butcher that. I am so sorry. Thank you for that. The book club members, and I am one, get together right now online to discuss what we're learning and what we're starting to notice in our own lives as we're introduced to new concepts. Another way that Guild is encouraging familiarity is by openly sharing resources, including a shared page on our intranet site that all employees can add to and draw from. Our marketing and communications people manage that page and are also involved in Guild for All to ensure cohesive messaging around Guild's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I got that quote from marketing and communications. Wanted to make sure I got that right. So we're trying to collect information from all staff when we can, when we work on projects. Like right now within Guild for All, we're trying to get a list of culturally diverse vendors and restaurants that we could patronize more. I just reached out to Guild staff myself, as many as I could, to create a list of examples of microaggressions that we experience in the community, since this is something Paris thought might be an interesting topic. You know, those small things that we don't even know we're doing, some of us, and to get insight on that. So I thought I would close with that list, as those examples might give us something to discuss as we're all learning and growing in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion together. But before I go into that list, I wondered if you have any questions for myself or Beth before she leaves.
I do have a question. This is Andrea from Family Values for Life. Sorry, I can't be on camera. I'm on mommy duty today.
Oh no, it's always fun to see your kids too. So you know, don't feel afraid of that. Welcome, Andrea. Go ahead.
Thank you. This could either be for either one of the two ladies today. With Family Values for Life, we are looking to do some summer programming that work around more training and jobs for the women in our programs. And so we are wondering if that's something that you all do, or how do you go about getting involved with your nonprofit to help our ladies in the area of, you know, resume building and job searching, and then even for the ladies who do have a job, how to maybe keep, you know, their jobs or ask for raises, because sometimes that's hard to do as well.
So I guess you're going to let me answer that, huh, Beth?
Well, I was going to say that could be a great opportunity, Andrea, for you and Dana to maybe connect after. I think Dana would be a great resource. Even if it's not something that Guild can do specifically, we could probably get you connected to some folks that could, if that's not something we can do. So I will let Dana take it from there, but that feels like a really great follow-up conversation to this meeting.
Well said. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ladies.
And in general, I would like very much to connect with you all after, and whoever may be watching this at a different time. I asked Paris for contact information. I'd love to send you a little information and would welcome a response if I email you, just because I'm sure there are ways that we can work together.
So Dana, before you jump in with the scenario or the stories that you're going to share, I think I will just jump in and say, excuse me, Dana's done a great job of illustrating kind of our vision and the practice and the way that this work we are ensuring is happening across the entire organization. I think as business leaders, and as one of the leaders of Guild, I would also like to share that some of the work that we're doing, some of the task work that we're doing as our leadership team, is we are looking at our policies and procedures. we are changing some of that language to be more inclusive and to have language around diversity, equity, and inclusion and Guild's commitment to it. We're redoing our job descriptions. We're actually changing some of our hiring practices to include different places that we are posting positions. So those are some of our more business operations work that we are doing to make sure that our entire lens at Guild is shifting to be inclusive of this work. From, you know, every staff person all the way up to the decisions that we're making in hiring and the decisions that we're making and how we are rolling out processes and procedures.
Great.
So Beth, actually, but before Beth jumps off, maybe would you just follow with an example? So like when you think about, you gave a general example, but like a specific example, when you are looking at policies and procedures for hiring, say, it sounds like you discovered that you tended to put your position descriptions and employment opportunities in only a narrow range of places. What are some other places you have discovered are good places to post for hiring?
So we're actually looking, and right now we're in the process, we just put out a request a few weeks ago for all of our staff to share different groups that they belong to, affinity groups that they're aware of, groups on Facebook, groups on other social media sites. So at this point, we are gathering all of that data, and we're going to start posting our positions to all of those places. So I don't have the list up right now, but I know that there are a couple different groups, especially on Facebook. We're finding a lot of them we're able to connect through social media. But if that is something you were interested in, Paris, I could send you that list.
No, that's perfect, Beth. I mean, that kind of helps just animate that thinking a little bit. You've asked your staff to help broaden the network based on who they know and where they know folks like them, people that you've hired. I wonder if there's also an opportunity to reach out to customers to see, like, where is it that they would be looking for postings if you've got a diverse customer group that's not inside your employment group already or inside your employee profile already. I mean, that would seem to me like that makes sense, and that we might have access to other networks if we were thinking a little more broadly. Thanks, that answers my question.
Okay, great.
And Beth has, you know, information about our trainers, different resources. So if anyone is interested in more detailed information about what we're doing at Guild with regard to that, you know, we can connect on that as well. All right, are you ready for my list? Okay.
I think we are. Go ahead. Drum roll, please. No, that's okay. Right. Go ahead, Dana.
I'm actually going to start with my own mistake, because this is not something where any of us should feel defensive, because we all make mistakes. And I'm going to start with my own flub, which was, I feel bad about it. I've talked with my client about it. I've learned from it, and I'm going forward. So, but you know, as you know, I have clients who are looking for employment, and I do help them with resumes and how to best present themselves and all those kinds of things, and find those good fits. What is the right kind of work? All of that. So I had an individual, a woman of color, who is has a history of being a hairstylist. And as I'm helping her collect leads to look into, they were all Black hair salons. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I can cut anyone's hair." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I couldn't believe that. I mean, I couldn't believe that I was actually looking at Black salons, because she was a Black woman stylist. You know, and since then, every time I go get my hair cut, I look at how many people are there that are people of color, and I'm like, what was I thinking? So that's my example. You know, I'm not proud of it, but I am learning and growing every day.
Well, and Dana, how it speaks volumes that your client could just bring that up to you.
Right.
Right. And not just kind of stuff that, like, you know, yeah, typical, here we go again.
Yeah.
More like, well, let's address it and see if we can push past it. And that's, you know, kind of a remarkable moment of courage on her part and on yours
Yes.
to accept that and go like, well, you're totally right.
Yes.
Let's change it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so the next example, an individual gave me when this is somebody who works as a receptionist at Guild or a program assistant, but she answers phones quite a bit. And she says that when she gets names, for instance, or information about people that's culturally different, she will say, you know, I'm sorry if I don't remember this or if I get it wrong. Like I just flubbed the name of of the author of the book study that we're doing, right? You know, she says that she's noticed when she goes to other organizations, you know, she'll hear things like, oh, I'll never remember that name, you know, instead of saying, you know, I'm gonna make sure I remember this name, but if I make a mistake, you know, please forgive me. I'm gonna try though, and you know, just a different perspective on that. I brought an individual with me for an informational interview, which is something we like to do with businesses, just to get to know what employment services is about, and for us to get to know what the business is about, the culture, what the opportunities are there. It's more informational exchange than a formal interview. And we just like to introduce our candidates that way to businesses and vice versa. So I was in a meeting like that with a candidate who was very dark-skinned, and the manager was very light-skinned, white person, lots of jewelry, and she looked at me the entire time. She never looked at the person sitting next to me. And I noticed it, and he noticed it. We talked about it afterward, and he decided he wouldn't want to work in a place like that. And I couldn't blame him, you know. So there was another example. And I'm sure that person didn't even realize it. So ahead.
No, I was just going to say, or perhaps, I mean, there's an unconscious preference going on there too, I imagine, right, Dana? That perhaps the person doing the interviewing is saying, I'm uncomfortable here.
Right.
I can't even look at the candidate.
Right.
And there is whether unconscious or not, a real communication going on there, isn't there?
Yes.
And your client caught it loud and clear, like, I am not welcome here. And guess what? I don't want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You know, and I think that it's important also to note that these little microaggressions that we're talking about are really simple external things, but there's something way down deep inside of us that needs to be taken a look at too. You know, why is that the case? It's fine to try to be more conscious about looking at the person who's talking to you that might be different than you, but that's good, but it's almost like a Band-Aid. It's like you have to look a little deeper too. So, and then I have a colleague actually that I talked to who's on the Guild for All committee, and she is married. She's a white woman who's married to a black man, and she says that almost every time they eat out in the community, that the waiter or waitress puts the bill in front of her instead of her husband, who is black. So it would be probably preferable to put it in the middle of the table if someone is unsure, but that's just something that they have to deal with every time they go out to eat. You know, and it's funny because this is Ebony Johnson, who I work with, you know, and I talked to her about it, and she was like, oh, yeah, I totally get it. She's a person of color, and she totally gets it. And she said, you know, they should always put it in front of the man. And I'm like, well, now, wait a minute, Ebony. Maybe that person doesn't identify, you know, whatever. And so it's like, you have to always just never assume that you've got all the answers, you know, whoever you are and whatever your background is, you know, let's just all stay open. So I just thought that was interesting. So she laughed about that too. Okay, so another example is I had a wonderful conversation with a business leader. We talked a few times, and they were so interested and open to the idea of employment services as I described it, to getting to know more about Guild and what I do at Guild and who my candidates are. They definitely had openings. They were very interested and wanted to meet a candidate. I was very excited. I got the email. I emailed the resume of my candidate to set at the same time as my attempt to set up a meeting. The name of my candidates, I can only use the first name, obviously, but was Muhammad. And I never heard back from that very interested business leader again. I tried to contact them, email them, call them, never heard back again. Just night and day. Along those lines, my coworker, Ebony Johnson, whose name you may guess, just from the name that she's a person of color. Something we do at Guild is we buddy up, like we've done it since COVID started, because we're doing more phone contacting with business leaders than out in the community, in person. So we've noticed that it's helpful to have two of us on a call. And it's a voice call, not a video call. But when she introduces herself as Ebony Johnson, she gets a different reaction. And so she purposely says, and I'm here with my colleague, Ellie Erickson. And then there seems to be more of a receptivity. So this is something that she recognizes and has seen over and over and over again. Then Ebony says that when she goes out as a Black employment specialist and she brings a Black client, she feels like business leaders are are even more, I guess, I don't know if it's suspicious or intimidated or what the feelings are, but she has a hard time. She gets a lot of people to work with that are Black because she's Black, and it's like, well, you can relate and all of that, but it's harder too, because now you've got two Black people going in the community talking about employment opportunities, and that can be hurtful for the chances, she thinks, of her clients. When she goes out with a white client, a lot of times people will mistake her as the client and think that the employment specialist is the white person who is the client. I've experienced confusion as to who was the employment specialist and who was the client with my white clients, but never with my Black clients. Yeah, so these are things that we just have noticed and that are true out in the community. I think that's it.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry. Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you for that. I think there may be some reactions or some desires to check out or jump in. The intention for us on this call here is to create some space to talk about, some safe space to talk about what we're observing going on in the community. We often have high-level conversation about everything being fine, a post-racial America. But it seems like one of the things that's pretty clear from your experience and from other folks that I've heard just talk about what's going on, and let's open it up here, is that is not the case. That is not how we feel like things are proceeding or about the experience that people are having. So I wonder if other folks have examples of this microaggression level that is moving in a way that it's subtle, but it seems like it's always there. Or it seems like it could be there, and that's something that we are on guard against, or curious about how we make progress with, or resolve, or just observe. Are there other folks or people that want to react to some of what Dana has shared about some of those microaggressions that she found her colleagues experience? Just gesticulate wildly, or you can click. Okay. Let's go with Randy, and then, let's go with, if it's okay, Randy, let's go with Andrea, or no? Okay, you want to go with Randy, Tyler, Andrea? Okay. Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, so I can relate to what Dana's saying, especially as I learned my own lesson when I first started in helping working for organizations helping people with disabilities. I once mistook a staff member for a person served in our program. I was having lunch with a new individual when I'd first started and asked what program they were in, and she said, "I'm the director of programs." And so it was a learning lesson for me as well.
Nice, Randy. So I'm curious because, I mean, nice, right? Like, oh no, super embarrassing. How do you, I think part of what we learn is how we recover, because we're going to keep sticking our foot in our mouths. It seems like as we're learning. How did you or your colleague help you repair there?
I instantly understood and apologized on the spot, of course. And we just became very good, close coworkers throughout my career, working 8 years.
Turned it from a negative into a positive right there of building across to create familiarity.
He gave me a second chance.
Nice. Tyler?
Randy, I feel your pain. I feel like I do that all the time. When I go to any business, any cold business, I ask for the manager or someone that handles that, and they're like, "Yep, that's me." So I can definitely relate to that one. And I kind of giggle and say, "Good. Well, now we don't have to spend any time finding them," and kind of moving on from there. So I definitely can touch on that one, as well as you were talking a little bit earlier about when you're asking for interviews and just hearing the name sometimes. So you said Mohammed, sometimes you don't get quite a reaction. I'm actually a property manager off of Nicollet, so not on the east side, but we actually have a tenant right now that wants to move in, and we're seeing some of those little micro adjustments and aggressions. We're just not getting the feedback. So really it's kind of stepping in and helping where we can. And now I'm going out there a lot, saying my name, trying to get a little bit more of these contractor works to make sure we can get something done. So definitely can feel some of that pain.
I've made that same mistake too. And I've trained myself to try to say to somebody, "Are you the owner? Am I talking to the owner?"
Yeah, I realize that's kind of the best way to do it is ask if they're the manager, or do you handle that, or is there someone else I can talk to? Seems to be a little bit better phrasing.
Tyler, I wanted to ask a follow-up about your experience as a landlord. Did you say landlord or owner of property? When you are going out, what's the confusion? What's the microaggression going on there? Like, do you have some people applying for go ahead.
Not for us. We are actually trying to get contract work done. And the tenant has some specific needs that they need done, and they're reaching out to a lot of different contractors. And she's also quite young. She's a couple of years out of college, and her mom is the one that kind of owns it, but she's kind of taking the lead on it. But when she's reaching out, she's seeing very little progress. I think she's probably touched close to 20 different contractors and hadn't seen much.
Wow, so, meaning people take her call and they think, this person's not serious, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, we don't need the work. Like that?
Yeah, and we're talking some larger numbers too. So there's a lot of things, especially I know when the PPP loans are going around, where people are a little bit more conscious to take work, especially with new businesses in such large volume, because they think possibly it's a scam or what's going on. So we had to step in and put our name onto it too and say, hey, we're looking for it, which is sad, but it's something that we're kind of growing around.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for bringing that up. This also layers, I want to get to Andrea, but I want to come back to something that Dana said earlier that Tyler, I think, comes up again. Go ahead, Andrea.
Just want to make a comment too. I can totally relate. I grew up in North Dakota, of all places. My dad was in the military, but even at that, I would go to jobs. My maiden name was Livingston. And so Andrea Livingston sounds very not Black, so to speak. So when I would go to the interviews, I would say, hi, I'm Andrea Livingston. I'm here to interview for this. And they would ask to see my ID because they didn't believe I was who I said I was, because they think that my name represents who I am. And even working with family values for the time I've been and working in the community and things like that, I really learned not to assume people are of a certain race because of their name. And then now when I introduce myself, I just use my first name. And then I be very professional on phone calls and everything. And then when they see me, it's a little, you can see the nonverbal, like, oh, I didn't expect this person. And plus maybe my voice too, sounds a little different. So when I speak, people think that I'm someone totally different. So I can really relate to what Dana was saying, going in groups and pairs and the people having that nonverbal communication with people as well. So I think it's really important that leaders and businesses are very conscious of their nonverbal as well as their verbal expressions and explanations. And of course, of the young man who wasn't acknowledged in that interview, nobody wants to work with someone who's, their nonverbal expressions are saying something else. And then a good way to recover, what I do too, like Randy, had kind of mentioned, like if I mess up, just recovering or just even saying a name, like, I'm really good. Can you say your name again for me? Because I want to be intentional about respecting names, and some of the names can be hard, a little difficult, but if you just let them know, like, please let me know your name and say it for me and let me say it back to you. And then that way I can practice, because they'll be like, oh, my name's so-and-so, but you can just call me Pete. I'm like, no, that's not your name. Tell me what your name is. So I think that's important that we do too. So thank you for this conversation. It's really awesome and enriching.
Thanks, Andrea. That's a really good point about names. I think one of the things that's kind of difficult for those of us who don't remember names very well is that sometimes when I ask for an intentional pronunciation so that I can try to remember and I still forget, that's got to be very disheartening for the person who, knew they were telling me their name and I was going to intentionally remember, and then I went ahead and forgot anyway. I just oftentimes, and because I'm meeting many people in the community, I will often walk up to somebody and just say, I'm Paris. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, no, I know you're Paris. And I'm like, no, that's my cue because I can't remember your name. I'm hoping you'll tell me your name again because I can. And then somebody else is like, you know what? I'm sorry, I just blanked. On your name. It can feel a little awkward, especially with someone whom I've asked, please tell me your name and how you pronounce it. Go ahead, Dana.
I think that the point is if you come across in a humble way, like owning that you're the one messing up, that's a whole lot better than, oh, I'll never remember it,
That's a really good point. That is a really good point. I wonder if that resonates with people too. I mean, it's difficult to be vulnerable in that space and say, oh, what? I think I've forgotten your name. What's your name? Versus, putting up that wall. Like, I'm never going to remember your name anyway. I sometimes say this when I'm in a conversation with people who have forgotten my name. I say, well, yeah, I know all 5'10" white boys look alike. We often get right. Exactly. You get that kind of like, and they'll chuckle and be like, yeah, I'm sorry. I just called you Jared. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know who you're thinking of, but I'm Paris. We have this problem with each other and facial recognition anyway, because of familiarity, I think. I think it's because of that familiarity that you said, Dana. And so sometimes we're not registering to each other because we are unfamiliar. Even just the look of us is unfamiliar to folks. I don't know. It's okay. I appreciate you're just encouraging, like, okay, just own it then. Yeah, it's okay. That's on me. That's not your fault that I forgot your name. It's my fault. I wanted to ask about, and just to say, welcome Representative Jay Xiong, and Jane Prince also dropped in. Councilmember Jane Prince dropped in. She said she had to jump out to another meeting. And Lindsay Schmidt from Delwood Gardens. Those are folks who have joined newly since we did introductions. And Vivid Concepts. William, I forgot. You've come on as Vivid Concepts. Thanks for mentioning that in the chat. William Schultz, ESABA board member. We've had some conversation, and I just want to say, Dana, I want to ask about the layering sometimes. And Tyler, I think this is interesting. You've got, as you mentioned, this person is young. So we've got a layering of discrimination going on sometimes, right? Like we've got someone we perceive as not that experienced. We've got a gender that layers over, you know, this, why would you place it in front of the man all the time either? You know, the assumption is the woman can't pay. Well, you know, that's a storied gender assumption that we have been working on breaking since the 1970s. And we're going on 50 years here of women trying to be people, you know, like, oh, okay. And we have race going on in your component there too, Dana. Just the acknowledgement that this person's probably treating that person because that person can't possibly pay. You know, like, how do we, so there's a lot of layering going on there. And I wonder what we make of that and how we kind of work in a space that's complicated, clearly, and we're going to make, and maybe this is just to the point that we're going to make mistakes. We are.
And I really do think it keeps coming back to that humility, you know. And honestly, you know, I mentioned briefly that we all have trauma, and that maybe it's different levels or different types, but I kind of think that a key to this is for everyone to take responsibility for dealing with their own trauma history. That might make it hard to be humble, you know. Maybe it's hard to admit we're wrong. For different reasons. Maybe it was not safe to admit you're wrong. Who knows? But I think that the answer is humility in terms of relating with other people in a respectful way, owning our stuff, whatever it is, and being open to learning.
I think that's great, Dana. So I want to turn this to other folks who have had conversations like this inside your organizations, or are you, just to kind of test the temperature on the water there about, like, are you having conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Do you find that they are landing in a space that helps you work on the things that you're actually encountering in your real lives? What else would be helpful inside that space, you think, if those things are not connecting? So Dana, thanks for sharing. I want to just ask people, are you having these conversations in your businesses or in your organizations? And to what degree do you feel like that's really landing with you or your colleagues and helping push the conversation forward? And or what else do you think would help more? What do you think would be better? Thoughts about that? Who would be willing to step into that vulnerable? Go ahead, William.
I can't say like I can speak for Rain, but we're not really necessarily having those conversations, but we have emphasized being a part of an organization like this, and getting involved in these kind of conversations and learning more and getting involved in communities that are such as the East Side. I can say this, when you say things that could be done better, I think one thing that I had a recent conversation with a council member where we were talking, and they were talking about giving money and more access to capital to underserved communities. And I said, look, I'm all for that, but here's my problem. Here's where I think we miss the mark sometimes, is that we give people money, but we don't teach them financial awareness, meaning like nobody's financially literate, but yet we keep giving and giving and giving, all that stimulus money that was given away. I was talking to someone who worked at the Cherry Pit in East Side establishment, and they're like, you know what? When that first stimulus money was coming out, our bar was packed every week, every night, to where we had to extend our lunchtime thing, right? And then when they stopped giving the $600 or $300 a week, whatever it was, the bar wasn't as packed anymore. So that, what it shows me, and when we talk about making things better, and we're talking about equity now, this is where I'm talking about equity, because I think we talk about equality, but equity is giving us something, but teaching us how to, if I can give you a fish, I'll feed you for a day. If I teach you how to fish, I can feed you for a lifetime. And that's where I think we could do better with the equity portion. It's not just about giving people things. It's about teaching them how to have their own thing.
So William, that's great. I mean, I'm with you there. Want to get some other responses for sure. And just want to say, we have to be able, my curiosity is, I think we have to be able to do that without assuming that you don't know, or that I don't know, that we're offering something and inviting folks to take it up without the assumption that they're not ready to handle it. Does that make sense too, William? And we have to have some humility to do that in a graceful way, or we'll turn people off
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what the answer is there, but does that also make sense in there?
I think that was very clear what you said, and I think that's very true. And it just, the reason why I'm an employment specialist and have been for so long is because I love the idea of helping people, just like William was saying, to do well for themselves. But it's hard when they don't get those opportunities. So that's part of why I do what I do.
Thanks, Dana. Other voices want to chime in on this question, how we push this and what you're learning inside your organization, maybe with these conversations.
So we at Dellwood Gardens have started a equity and inclusion sort of community within. And we started by having an outside consultant kind of come in and drive some conversation for us. But we're starting to take those conversations internal. And what I'm finding is that people are not willing to really engage in the conversation and have difficult conversations. So if you guys have any sort of insight or tips on how we can start to engage and just foster that it is a safe environment and that we want to have these conversations so that we can do better once we know better.
I can tell you from our experience at Guild that a lot of us were squeamish about these mandatory all agency inclusion trainings, but they were mandatory. And so we went and they hired a facilitator who it was a little uncomfortable at first, but it was an all-day thing, and everybody was in it. And we had breakouts and so on, and then we had follow-up trainings with the same trainer. And you know what? Eventually, people have to confront things that they don't want to confront if they're forced to, and that's why we did it as a mandatory thing.
Do you have the name of that facilitator by chance, or could you find that for me?
Yeah, I can definitely. And Beth has all of the information, but the one that I'm speaking about was actually before she got to Guild, so I will make sure that you get that. I think the easiest way is for me to email you after I get your contact information from Paris. And then if you could just remind me what we just talked about, I'll make sure I email you back with that information.
So Lindsay, and I see Andrea nodding too, and I just want to ask other folks who haven't spoken yet, if I've spoken a lot, and so has Dana, but appreciate that. In terms of what could ESABA also bring into this space to be supportive and helpful? Here we're talking about microaggressions, and we just sorted some of Dana's experiences. Lindsay, I hear you saying, what are some good resources we could use in terms of facilitators who might push our work? I see Andrea nodding too. Are there other conversations or other things that ESABA could bring into this space that could help support you all as you are doing this work? Other thoughts about that? And certainly anyone else who would like to chime in, go ahead.
Resources such as facilitators are great. Also resources for anonymously getting a pulse for how your staff members feel about the culture within your organization. We've done our best to try to put some things together, but just more in-depth resources on that would be helpful too, just so you kind of get a baseline of how are people feeling.
Nice. And some ways to kind of peak that conversation. By anonymously, I'm hearing you say, we need something that people can fill out maybe and not, have to. Okay, that makes sense. I would also be interested in where else we would want to have, this could be a broad conversation, and we are just about to the end of our time. One of the things that came up in our nonprofit meeting, for instance, right, is regarding scale that we could talk about. Dana mentioned it, this stuff touches us personally. We have a personal growing edge, and we have some personal resistance, or we have some personal curiosity or desire that pulls us forward, both of those things. We also have big things going on in our community. I mean, big things going on in our community that sometimes are difficult for us to get our hands around, or we're scared about our own reaction to some of those to some of those things, and how that kind of comes forward. We've had, you know, like a year of really, right, the reckoning that we've heard about this. And one of the things that came up in a meeting for the programs committee, when we were talking about this, one of our members just said, I feel like we are in a space now more than ever where people are reading us and judging us just by how we look, period. Everyone who comes in is got that layer of judgment on. You look like a white person, I've got a category for you. You look like a black person, I've got a category for you. You look Asian, I've got a category for you. And we are not doing as good a job. We're in a space where we need to do a better job so that that doesn't just go to a hard flashpoint, to a bad place. You know, how do we work on softening this space so we can meet each other, talk to each other, learn more about each other than dismiss at the face value? So that's some of what I think we need to engage with a little and figure out what kind of experiments ESABA could help us host in that kind of space. I want to get any reactions you all have to that.
Well, I think just having more, you know, discussions like this is great. Surveys, you know, you could set out a survey to kind of take the pulse of the community and what people think. And I think something Lindsay touched on was people feeling safe. You know, if we can create safer spaces, I think, because right now with the cancel culture going on, you know, on social media, people are just afraid to, you know, if they have a differing point of view that, you know, they're going to get, you know, just lambasted, you know, and you know, thrown into like a, you know, some kind of a cave or dark hole and never be seen again, right? If you don't feel the same way as somebody else. I think creating a safe space that's free of judgment. I mean, even for somebody to come into, you know, ESABA is generally people that are more forward thinking, maybe more open-minded, and maybe get somebody from a different community that wants to learn more and has a different point of view. I think it's important to listen to those and try to understand those. So I think ESABA could just create a discussion. You could probably create a whole Eastside Connect around having, okay, we're going to take this hour and we're going to have breakout rooms and we're going to discuss how people feel about these 3 topics. And maybe that'd be a way to move the ball forward in our community and invite people from other communities.
I agree with William. I was actually going to say the same thing. And then also for ESABA members who are looking to employ people, perhaps maybe have a mandatory training, or I don't know if it'll be too much to be mandatory, but have some of the members who are a part of the group go through those trainings, and then they can invite their other employees or even people that they're connected to a group conversation. But I think it's important to have something like that for the businesses.
Yeah, I think businesses are a real hurdle here. Like in terms of like who's supporting your small family bit, you know, like you've got an agency, yes, you've got a, you know, you're part of a big organization, that's something. You're a part of a little family-owned operation, you know, like how do you get your hands around some of these conversations? I think it would be interesting to reach out to some of our small businesses and hear them talk about where they feel like they are with this topic. You know, Lindsay, you all have done something inside your organization. Randy, you're having diversity and inclusion, especially around disabilities, training all the time, right? I imagine.
Yeah, well, you know, we serve a broad group of people from all colors with disabilities, and we're working on staff diversity. I think we're doing a pretty good job moving the right direction, but we are trying to diversify our board of directors. And I'll just, again, if anybody has interest, we're greatly interested in local business leaders from the East Side who might be willing to join us and help us diversify our board. And any contacts that you have, please send them my way. I'd love to connect.
Thanks, Randy. Okay, there's more to say. We didn't feel like we were going. Well, no, everybody, we did it. We solved this problem. Hey, it's lunchtime. Okay. Here's some announcements for us. I'm going to drop them in for us to just think about, and then we'll sign off. Thank you, everybody, for a great conversation today. Thank you, Dana and Beth.
Hey, Lindsay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, see, those two are connecting. We've got.
And I would love to reach out to you, and I need to see 6 business leaders per week. That's part of my job. So I would love to meet at a coffee shop, do a virtual meeting, but I'm sure there's ways we can meet together. I'll reach out to you and see if you want to get to know. You've gotten to know a little bit about Guild. I'd love to get to know your business and see how we might be able to work together.
Thank you so much, Dana.
Reach out. You know how to find me. I put my contacts in the chat. So
excellent. Thank you.
Let's connect for sure.
That's terrific.
Awesome. Call us with your candidates.
Go ahead, Randy. What?
Please call us at MSS if you have candidates interested in serving people with disabilities as a career. We would love to chat with your candidates.
Awesome.
That's also a good lead. Fantastic. Lindsay has popped her information into the chat and had to jump. So we're there. Thank you so much. We've got a couple things coming up this next week. Elaine Wiseman is running the vaccination bus on June 2nd. So if you still have clients or contacts that you're working with in the community that still need to be vaccinated, they're bringing the bus over to Hazel Park UCC. So right off of White Bear Avenue. It's going to be fantastic on June 2nd. So watch for that. And then next week, we're having a conversation with 180 Degrees, another great nonprofit on the East Side. And we're going to be talking about trafficking and about seeing the cues and signals in our community and believing our eyes when we see them and knowing what to do. If, you know, at least kind of, again, how do we work on familiarity and understanding what we're seeing and how we navigate? Thank you so much for a great conversation today. I'll be getting this conversation out and around, and we'll be talking about what good next steps there are for us moving forward. And I hope you'll all participate in that conversation too. Thanks so much. Any final words?
Thank you so much, Paris.
Thanks so much.
Gina. Okay. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye-bye.